if you read enough manga, you'll find that the mother-con trope, basically a dude who's crushing hard on his moms for some reason, is pretty common. Now, I don't know why it's so common or why there is such a strong market behind it, but sometimes you find a story within that genre that isn't cringy and vomit-inducing. Ookumo-chan Flashback is one of those stories. Written and illustrated by Richi Ueshiba, author of Mysterious Girlfriend X, Yume Tsukai, and Discommunication, Ookumo tells a really interesting and touching, if not somewhat predictable, story. We open with 16-year-old Minoru Suzuki, a high schooler who lately has been having dreams and flashbacks of his mother when she was 18. These flashbacks, however, are seen from the perspective of someone else, and most often this mysterious person just so happens to be staring at his mother's ass. So yeah, this manga opens up like any other typical ecchi manga. And if you've ever seen Mysterious Girlfriend X, you're probably thinking that this is going to be very weird and full of a lot of incesty jokes, which it kinda has. But the story is actually really endearing and a lot deeper than what you're initially introduced to. Minoru's mother, Aya Suzuki, is a widowed mangaka in her mid-30s who is always buried in her work. She's a considerate and doting mother, but she's not always able to do things for her son, like cook breakfast or do the laundry, so Minoru takes it upon himself to help out around the house. The thing is, Minoru absolutely adores his mom and is entranced by her beauty and her fat ass. So there are times when he can feel awkward around her. In fact, he doesn't really vibe with girls his age. He really likes his mom, not intensely, but these flashback visions aren't helping, and his mother's uber affectionate nature doesn't alleviate the situation. As the story goes on, we get some more reveals, and characters start to develop more and more. It turns out that the flashbacks happen whenever Minoru experiences a similar moment to one shared between his father and mother, who were high school sweethearts. So a lot of these moments aren't Minoru really lusting after his parent, but perusing the emotion and the memory behind it. And Aya doesn't see Minoru in any way other than her responsible son, even if she teases him for being a mother-con. The story has high points and low points, but it isn't a long read, 6 volumes, so you're never really slogging through any uninteresting parts in the storyline, and great moments and great characters also don't overstay their welcome. In fact, when new characters are introduced, it feels like a breath of fresh air. None of these characters are overly developed, but there are great life lessons that Minoru learns, whether it's indirectly from his father teaching him the things that he is unable to because he's been dead for a long time, or if it's Aya's old coworker coming back into her life, showing her the reality of possibly moving on to maybe consider dating again. The younger characters that are around Minoru's age, basically the members of the school manga club, also help plow the story along. Hajime, a girl who has a developing crush on Minoru and a great interest in Aya's work, and her ass, that too, has a lot of growth as well, even if she isn't the most interesting supporting female lead. But her conversations with Hitomi, another member of the manga club, reveal a lot about her character, so you aren't rolling your eyes whenever she appears in the pages. For such a short manga, Ookumo-chan Flashback covers a lot of ground. On the surface level, it seems to be a story about a teen who is super affectionate towards his mother, ignorant of the appropriate romance that's blossoming right in front of him. But truly, it's about independence and individuality. It can be really hard to go through puberty without a father figure, and I imagine that Minoru leans into his mother's presence so intensely, he's so overprotective over her because he lacks the additional guiding figure in his life. but we see over time he gets more comfortable with his mom living her own life, and he starts to come to terms with the interests, friendships, and relationship that will help him mature into a responsible adult who isn't such a mama's boy. And those particular areas were my favorite throughout this series. Seeing Minoru learn to trust Hajime with his home life and bring her into the fold, not only as a means to help her get experience developing her own interests and ability in manga, but also as a means to help reduce his mother's workload. It's refreshing to see a lead in a manga not have the ace type trope. Having the supporting cast step up to contribute to significant parts of the plot always makes for a good read. And seeing a relationship actually go somewhere between characters instead of resting on will they, won't they, is a godsend, truly. There is repetition with this manga though. Each chapter follows a clear chronological order and covers about a yearish worth of time in these characters' lives. But a lot of the time, it just feels like a backdrop change. If you ever watched That's So Raven, then you know how episodic each chapter ends up. Minoru is doing something, most times with his mother, sometimes with his school friends. Someone does something, he has a flashback to his dad doing something with his mom, usually sexually implied, and then we follow Minoru's quest to determine what the reason for the flashback was, without revealing to anyone else that he is having these flashbacks. He discovers what happened in the past, it usually not being as cultured as he and the reader is hoping for. A lesson is learned, and the plot creeps along about 3%. It is a bit exhausting because this formula never switches up, so by the time you come to the end of the manga, you feel good, but also relieved that the journey is finally over. The ending of the manga is great. I won't give too much away, but it was just fun. I liked it, and I wouldn't have minded seeing this series hit 50 plus chapters. In fact, this is the sort of manga where, if it were to ever get adapted, it would benefit from filler episodes and some padding here and there. Even with the flashback device growing old about halfway through, the characters don't overstay their welcome and are emotionally complex enough to keep you interested in how things resolve for them, and also has you genuinely rooting for certain connections to be made, from the supporting student cast all the way to the adults, even if it means that somebody's heart is going to get broken as a result. I really enjoyed this manga. The art isn't good, and that's by design, but the story's somewhat unique and very intriguing. There are a lot of really awesome callbacks to Yoshiba's previous work dating back to the early 90s as well. I think my biggest disgruntle is that the student characters don't act like 16 and 17-year-olds, and the adults don't seem to be in their late 30s. There were a few times that I would double check to see if the age part was maybe a mistranslation, but no, these are just young-looking, immature characters. So that's kind of a bother, but not that big of a deal, TBH. If you're a fan of any of his other works, you'll really enjoy Ookumo-chan Flashback. Despite a few flaws, if you're looking for something quick to read with a decent story, a focus on the manga creation process, likable characters, something that'll put more than a few smiles on your face, I'd recommend giving this a read. Ookumo-chan Flashback is a 6 out of 10.